Hi, my name's Simon Good, and thank you for checking out the channel. I'm a professional mediator and trainer in conflict resolution skills, and I'm actually putting up these videos as free conflict resolution training. The kind of frameworks and the tools that I'll describe and explore could be used at work or in family situations or, in parenting relationships, really across a number of different contexts. And if we can understand conflict, clarify what's important, what our options are, what's contributing to a situation, then it means that we can respond rather than reacting. So, in today's video, I'll be talking about setting goals, how we can identify goals of what's important, or even from amongst the things that are important, what are the priorities to make sure that we can, act in a way that's as good for us as possible in the long term. It achieves the things that are important to us. For me, I really struggle with reacting. It's in family situations at work. It's often a challenge for me to stay calm, especially when the other person's being a bit entitled. They're arrogant or over the top and a bit aggressive, maybe overbearing. They're the kind of situations where I can find myself either really wanting to stand up to them and hold on to my boundaries, or I just want to avoid them because I don't want the extra stress. And I just have learned that I need to manage my energy really carefully, and engaging in something that's draining for me. It doesn't just negatively impact me, although it does. I'm more tired, I'm more likely to have a beer after work, for example, or eat unhealthily or skip working out just because I'm feeling so flat. But it also means that I'm not there to be able to support other people in my life. I'm not as good a partner to my wife, or I don't think I'm as good a dad when I've had a really stressful day compared to when I can keep things more in balance and manage what's the priority, but let some of the other stuff go through to the keeper. I feel myself being more resilient, more able to deal with frustrations, making better decisions, being more generous and compassionate and kind and patient, and I guess all of the kinds of things that we want to be in order to support others. It often starts with clarifying and looking after ourselves. I know in situations where I do react, it's often because I lose sight of those longer term goals, or I react to my feelings and don't even really think about goals at all. It's often family situations. I can remember last week I had a blow up. I got angry at my wife, and it was just such a tiny thing in hindsight. She was in the middle of making my son his lunch, and I think she had a particularly busy day at work. I was just about to leave for a work trip myself, so I was packing the car and getting ready to go. And I said to her, "Hey, can I just walk you through which chemicals need to go in the pool before I go? You have to put half a kilogram of this or a bit of this or whatever. And you just put them in a particular order. I just wanted her to know which ones they were on the shelf amongst all of the different bags." Anyway, she said, "Oh, look, I'm just in the middle of this. Can we go through it later?" I'm like, "Yep, no worries." And then it's, 5 or 10 minutes later, I came back and said, "Can I just walk you through these chemicals? Because then I can go and have a shower and basically get ready to go." I think I probably just said, though, "Hey, can I just tell you these chemicals quickly? I got to go." And then she sort of, in an irritable tone of voice, just said, "I'm in the middle of something. Can we go through it later?" Or something like that. And I can remember sort of storming off in a bit of a bluster and sort of yelling out something as I went away. "Well, you don't have to talk to me like that. I'm just trying to be helpful and let you know what's needed before I go." Anyway, that little reaction or blow up was 100% because I wasn't thinking about what's important here. I was about to go on a work trip. My wife had a really busy day at work. So I don't understand why I would have done something that added to the stress, made us both a little bit more worked up, and probably then less able to concentrate. Increase the chance that I'll be a bit more aggressive on the road, for example, because I've got that adrenaline going through my system. And my son was sitting there, and I don't want to teach him that it's okay to yell at someone because you don't like the tone of voice that they used. There's so many different bits and pieces as I look back on that situation that if I'd just been able to pause and think about, well, what's important here, I would have managed it very differently. Similarly, at work, a lot of people get stuck, especially when the other person's doing the wrong thing, like they're asleep at their desk, or they're late, or they've been rude, they're acting entitled, they're illogical, whatever it is. It's tempting to just focus on the short term priorities, like, getting angry at this person for sleeping at their desk just after you're meant to be starting work. We often get stuck on things like, well, I need to stand up for myself. I want them to know that they can't get away with treating people like this. And I guess in principle, those kind of things are true. They might be connected to values that we hold, but maybe this isn't the time and the place. If I'm applying for a promotion next month, then I don't want to get in a big conflict with my boss. So I can just let them talk to me in a slightly rude tone or not say hello when they see me or whatever it is. I'm just choosing my battles. I'm just trying to keep things smooth because I've got this big opportunity coming up and I don't want to jeopardize that. It might even just be I don't want a lot of stress today. I'd prefer just to come to work and do my job and then go home. Maybe that means that I just don't really care how my boss talks to me. They're not going to be here forever. For me, this isn't a job that I'll be in longer term, so it's fine. Or even if I am going to be here longer term, I might even just sometimes choose to not be bothered with someone. If they're just venting, they're expressing their opinion, there's no real issue. In a lot of situations, there's things that you can just let go. Even though technically they were rude, they were disrespectful, it was unprofessional, they might have treated you more poorly than someone else in the team. So I guess you could argue that you've been singled out or bullied. And you need to really think carefully about the cost and benefit of addressing some of these situations. I'm not saying that you should let everything go. There will be some things that you do need to stand up for yourself and hold on to boundaries and be assertive, but they might not be everything. And if we don't pause and reflect, I guess the danger is that we would react and get sucked into and trapped in all different kinds of conflict, creating drama and issues for ourselves. And as I've said, that can then have a flow and effect to other people around who we want to support, or we lash out and act unreasonably to someone else just because we are feeling a bit wired and stressed and tense in the moment. I really like this quote from Lewis Carroll. I use it a lot when I'm doing conflict resolution training. If you don't know where you're going, then any road will get you there. What kind of an atmosphere would you like at work? What kind of a team dynamic is important to you? What kind of relationship would you like to have with your boss? Do you want to be friends, or maybe you've got enough friends? And if you can just keep this one civil and respectful, but the fact that you're a little bit cold and businesslike isn't actually such a big deal. But if you don't pause and think about that, you might think, why are they being so harsh and rude to me? I really do need to talk to them about this. So, in a conflict situation that you might be experiencing, the first step is to think about, what do you want? I would ideally like, my boss to leave me alone and stop micromanaging me. And then what do you need? Well, I need space. I need structure within the way that he gives me feedback. I need to be able to make decisions about things that affect me without someone else giving approval. If we think in this neutral and almost mutual way about some of these issues, it helps us express our need for that first. We could talk to our boss and say, I'm really needing a bit of space. Could we talk through structure of the way that we give feedback, or the way that I show my draft work to you while it's still in progress? It helps us to put that forward instead of saying something like, you're too over the top, you're too full on, what's the matter with you? This is ridiculous. You're micromanaging me, etc. Adding to a bit of the hysteria and tension within the situation, probably. And then you might even think about things like, what does the other person want? What's important to them? What's the goal for the relationship? Is there a particular idea that you've got around, what success would look like? How does that fit into your other personal goals? Those are all important things to consider. So maybe at the moment, this isn't the time when I want extra tension. There's been a lot of change within the organization, and now we're working towards stability. So the timing of the conflict might change then as a result. Maybe I've got a number of new people join the team, or we've got very experienced people that have been around for a long time. And so I really do need to deal with this issue relatively urgently. And then even within that, I've decided to address it. You might also think about, well, what do you actually want? What would you like the other person to do? I often say to people when I'm doing mediations, like, when you're talking about they talk to you disrespectfully, what do they say? They're not going to be able to change if you can't tell them what you're asking for. So it's important to be specific about the behaviors that you'd like. And maybe it's even thinking about work and outside of work life in a more integrated way, or the person that I'm interacting with here and other people around in a more integrated way, so that I don't come across as over the top saying to someone, look, you need to contribute, not you're not pulling your weight. maybe we could talk together as a group and say, look, I wanted to talk about how tasks and responsibilities are shared, because the last thing I want is for some of you to feel like you're doing more than others within the group. So when we're clarifying our goals, we might use a process like writing. I definitely find that writing is better than just thinking about something. Externalizing it on the page helps us to make sense of it, and writing with a pen and paper is often helpful because it slows down our thinking to start with, but also engages different sections of our brain, which can be helpful for creativity. So I'd write down a list of all of the things that's important for you in this situation. If my boss is micromanaging me, let's just pause and write down what's important here. So I might say something like, I'd like my mornings to get off to a good start. I'm feeling stress because I'm often getting feedback by email and it's not a two-way communication. I might also want to set a precedent that's healthy because I know that there's other more vulnerable people within the team and I want to look after them. I also would like to move into a leadership role myself in the next 6 months. So I don't necessarily see myself staying in this organization or within this team much longer than that. And then if I do decide to move, getting a positive reference from my manager might be something that's important to me. So I just write down all of these different bits and pieces, but something like that, like I want my manager to be very supportive and hopefully persuasive if I do use them as a referee. And with a job that I'm applying for, they might contact my previous boss. Maybe there's other people within the organization that I think I can use as a referee at the moment, but how long will they be here for? A lot of the time, people get stuck just because they haven't, I guess, used the foresight to think through what would be needed down the track. The second step that we would do is to identify the obvious priorities. So I would often write down a big list and then put a star or a tick next to a few of them. Usually it's two or three that stand out to you. So the chance for a promotion, that might be something that you put a star next to. It's a significant increase in money, rising up in your career, etc. Or maybe at the moment it's low stress. You've going through some challenging health issue yourself, or you've got a parent that's sick in the hospital and you need to visit them. You're really wanting not to add extra things onto your plate at the moment. You've got enough to carry on your shoulders as it is. So maybe that's something that you'd put a star next to. Or maybe it is a job and this is a relationship that's really important to you and you can see it fracturing the team. So you do need to talk to your boss about it. So you might put a star next to the fact that they should give you feedback differently. And then maybe it's having space or time to do your own work or whatever else it might be, relationships with others within the team. So then we would think next about options, and ideally the option would be able to meet all of those priorities. That's the gold star, that's what we're working towards first. So is there a way that I can keep my stress at a manageable level, talk to my boss about what they're doing, but also make sure that I'm holding on to a positive reference? Well, maybe that means that I approach it privately to start with. I might want to do it a bit carefully. Doing it in person might be something that works better for this kind of thing, so I wouldn't send an email. So what I'm going to need to do in the short term then is not biting back. If my boss sends me another rude and curt email criticizing work that I've done, in the short term, my plan will just be to not respond, to set up a meeting to talk it through. And once that's in the diary, it's 3 weeks down the track, then that will often help me manage the stress of the current situation because at least I know I've got a plan and I'm proactively dealing with it. And what often happens as we go through this process is that it also helps us to let go of some things. Maybe in the moment you did want to feel like someone wasn't walking over the top of you, or they need to understand how their behaviors affects other people or something like that. But actually, when we pause and reflect, maybe it's not your job to fix every person that you come into contact with. Maybe this isn't the only problem within this organization. There's a terrible leadership culture in general. So you being assertive with your manager might not actually make any difference at all. And you're going to leave soon anyway, and you want to keep them as a referee. So that might mean that if they get their back up and become defensive, that you just let it go quicker, or that you tread more carefully or slow down. Whereas if this is someone that you've got no ongoing relationship with, then you could just be more firm and not really worry about their feelings. So we need to really clarify all of those things to help us avoid the mistakes if we acted without that kind of critical reflection. So let's have a look at a couple of case studies here. A personal one to start with. It's my 6-year-old son. I just my son's name's Louis, and I mean, of course, every parent loves their kids so much, but I mean, I just think Louis is such an incredible person. I'm already very, almost like I admire his abilities and intelligence and emotional intelligence and all the rest of it. But he's still a 6-year-old, and we still have a lot of fights, which unfortunately means that I talk about him in a lot of the conflict training that I do. He saw one of my videos the other day, and he got a bit like worried, like, "Dad, you're saying bad things about me." And so I showed him what it was, and of course it was all positive and mainly mistakes that I'd made. But yeah, that in itself has become a conflict that I've needed to manage. Anyway, let's look at the most common example, which is before school. Every day has been a battle to get my 6-year-old son ready for school. I need to ask him at least 10 times to brush his teeth and put his socks on. And that's probably a pretty significant underestimation in some ways. It usually takes 45 minutes or so for the teeth and the socks to both get done. He's constantly getting distracted by irresistible factors like Pokemon cards. The weird thing is that he even has the gall to talk to me about the cars and make conversation, oblivious to the fact that I'm standing there fuming with my hands on my hips, angrily reminding him to brush his teeth. So a few times a week, this all ends in a blow up. It's usually me. I yell that if he doesn't brush his teeth right now, that he'll lose his TV time, or some kind of a threat like that. And he usually cries. He sometimes hides, like he'll go under the desk and hide, huddled up in a ball kind of thing, which just makes me feel horrible. Or he'll storm off in a rage, being angry at me. But I often reflect afterwards that I made a mistake here. I should have managed this differently. But in the moment, it's so difficult. So then we walk to school together, and everyone's grumpy. All of us are stressed. He's upset and distressed, like he's sad and probably a bit shaken up and hurt. And I feel like he's brought it on himself. I did remind you 20 times. I gave you 3 warnings, whatever. But when I reflect, I often think that I did probably handle that situation poorly. So that's the classic example. If we don't think about our goals, and that does happen to me pretty often in the moment, we overreact, or we react in a way that's going to cause problems for us. The last thing I want is for him to learn from me that this is the way that you deal with conflict. I want him to remember me as being patient and bigger and kinder and calmer and wiser. And so it's important for me to role model that, right? I also don't want extra stress. I don't want to be late to get to school. That's certainly true. But I hate starting work in the morning. I'm percolating away thinking about this horrible interaction that we had, and sitting there with regret, guilt, and worry about him also going off to school and being much more turbulent and stressed. Whereas if we could have had just a calm and relaxed kind of morning, I think he's almost like arriving ready to go without extra stress already built up in his system. So for me, it's really important to go through some type of an exercise like this and think, well, what do I actually want here? So the bottom line is I need to get ready before 8:30 or we're going to be late. For me, that's the number one goal, I guess, is that we have to find a way to make that happen. But writing it in that very neutral way, and it's mutual, I guess, like we need to get ready, or we need to make sure everyone's ready, or something like that. It really helps me then to not take it as personally. It's like this is a problem that we need to solve. I also need, I think, as a parent, my job is to help him develop awareness and a sense of responsibility. Like, it's not okay that I still need to remind him 20 times to get his socks and shoes on before he goes to work when he's 25 years old. So, sometime in between now and then, he has to figure it out. But actually, writing it down has helped me realize that maybe it's not as urgent as it might appear on the surface. I've got years to get this sorted, and we're moving in that direction. In the moment, it's easy to catastrophize and think, oh my God, this kid's not even picking up after themselves. They depend on us for everything. How are they going to make it in the world? Of course, we're on that trajectory somewhere. We've made progress, but it's easy to lose sight of that in the moment. He's much better than he was when he was 4. And at the same time, it's easy to almost catastrophize or set unrealistic expectations that we can wave a magic wand and fix some of these things. His brain is literally developing. What gave me the idea that he suddenly has the capacity overnight to do this stuff versus that he's developing the capacity to do it. And sometimes he'll get it and sometimes he won't. I also want to have a good relationship with him. I want him to feel comfortable with me, which means I need to be stable and consistent and reliable, not overreact. Like I want him to be able to tell me a problem and I say, no worries, mate, it's under control. We can get through this. I want him to respect me though. I don't want him to feel like he can walk over the top of me and ignore everything I say. I want to be a good role model. I want him to feel supported. I want to set him up for a good day at school. I want to set myself up for a good day at work and my wife as well. So that means I probably want a manageable level of stress. I don't want extra things to worry about or think about unnecessarily, which means that I might not react in the moment tomorrow if the same thing happens. What I'm hoping I can do is just grit my teeth and get through it without yelling. I might even walk him from room to room so that he doesn't have the chance to get distracted. I'll go up and tell him face to face rather than yelling from downstairs, "Put your socks on. If I have to tell you again, there's going to be trouble." It would be better probably to walk up so I'm there and say, "Mate, I've asked you 3 times. You need to put your socks on. Put the Lego down and go and pick up your socks." There's a whole bunch of different options I think that I could use to manage this in the moment. And then afterwards, I think that would probably be a more productive time to deal with this one. He's a pretty smart kind of kid, and I reckon I could probably say, "Hey, this is a problem. We're having a fight every morning, and it's often about socks and teeth. Maybe we could think about a system or a structure that's going to help to make sure we don't run into this problem." And I have tried that before, and he often says something like, "Well, how about I put my socks on and do my teeth, and then I'm allowed to play for 20 minutes?" And that would be just my absolute ideal. So, if we can come up with that, I might need to then remind him about that tomorrow morning. But it's better than starting from scratch. There's a little bit of buy-in and engagement. So we can sort of see how going through these goals helps us to act in quite a different way sometimes. Looking at another example here, maybe you've got a team leader who's quite pedantic, often coming to you asking for tiny changes in your work, which can be incredibly frustrating as it often takes time away when you're busy. You feel like a lot of those changes or suggestions are unnecessary, and that maybe the team leader is picking on you because they feel threatened. A lot of the time when I'm doing mediation, this is something people talk about, that if you're a high performer, it can sometimes almost feel like you've got a target on your back, especially if people in management or team leader roles are kind of crap and they might have either gotten there through this old system and now there's a lot of people that are more skilled than them, but they're desperately trying to hold on to their position here. Or it might be that they're realizing that it's a mismatch, that they're not performing, they're getting pressure themselves. Well, one of the reactions people sometimes make is to then find a scapegoat almost as to a possible other explanation that doesn't involve their own incompetence. So here you might feel like the team leader's picking on you because they feel threatened. At the same time, you love the rest of the team you work with and you find them all to be very friendly and supportive people. You're hoping to transfer to another section of the organization later in the year, and there might even be an opportunity for a promotion given a few of the structural changes recently. On the personal front, you've separated from your partner 6 months ago, and you're still in the middle of negotiations around finance and property. So if we were to write this down, we might say things like, well, I need some level of autonomy at work. That's true. What's the goal? Is it a promotion that's coming up? It sounds like here you're hoping to transfer to another section of the organization later in the year. So that would be one thing, and then there might even be an opportunity for promotion, given a few structural changes recently. So some of our goals might be things like I want to make sure that I have a good track record leading up to this and avoid HR or management being aware of any issues with my own communication. I might need, depending on the kind of work that you do, maybe your work is included in some of the application process. So it might actually mean that you talk to your boss about delivering the same feedback but by doing it in a less formal way. Like maybe they could come and talk to you about issues before writing it down and including it in the quarterly report that tracks these kind of interactions. That might mean that you can they can still give you the feedback, but it doesn't go on your record, which could negatively impact your application for a promotion. So your goal there might be something like, well, I need to make sure that I'm in a good position to apply for that promotion. And then working back from that gives us information about what we could ask our boss to do differently. Also, you've got that separation going on, which might mean that you're not sure how you're going to if you're going to stay living in the same location, or it might mean that there's a high level of stress at the moment, and so you don't want to add extra drama into your life at a time when things are already pretty chaotic and turbulent. That kind of situation often, when we think about those goals, it often really helps us to orient ourselves almost like a compass that's like, don't go in that direction at the moment. That's not necessarily going to be good for you. In the same situation, though, let's imagine that we're dealing with a team leader. They're very pedantic, comes and asks for tiny changes. But here, you can see in the second paragraph there, it's changed. Here, you're a recent graduate with aspirations of moving into leadership roles. So you might act in a strategic way as a result of that. Maybe you're wanting to create connections with other up and coming, I don't know, staff within the organization. So you might suggest to your team leader that we do this kind of feedback as a group, which might mean that, you're able to demonstrate your own skills and expertise differently. Or you might be more inclined to stand up to your team leader and clarify expectations. Learning how to manage conflict and dealing with difficult conversations like that might be a really important skill to have for you. Or if the team leader themselves is, they might have mental health issues or they're very erratic and unpredictable, then it might mean that you just strategically go with the flow in the short term and just do everything that you asked to do. Because for you, it's getting a bit of a track record of being a high performer is most important. The fact that your boss is coming to you with these changes, yeah, it's extra work that you need to do, but in the long run, it's probably going to be worth it. But we need to get clear on our goals if we're going to be able to make those kind of decisions. Or a final example, I've done a few mediations with people who are approaching retirement. They've reduced their work to a few days a week, and often it's a younger manager who comes along that doesn't have as much experience, making what they consider to be poor decisions, and their results conflict. Well, a lot of the time when I'm talking to these people in mediation, I say to them, like, how much is this worth to you? I mean, you've mentioned that you're gradually scaling back work and your commitment to the organization. You've got retirement on the horizon here in the very short term in some situations, and yet you're still getting stuck into this conflict. What's that about for you? Because often their goal is that they want to create a lasting impact on the organization, or their goal is that they want to prevent this kind of bullying behavior because it's been a pattern that they've endured all of their career. And so we can talk through those goals then. Well, you'd like to help the organization prevent bullying. One option is standing up to this team leader and doing mediation. Let's think through what outcome that might end up with then. Well, you and the team leader will come to an agreement. If they follow it, then it will all be good. If they don't, well, you might be back here in more mediation. What if impact do you think that will have on them after you're gone? Like, you've described them as a habitual liar or, a constant bully or super erratic personality. You've even said you think they've got borderline personality disorder. Well, how much change do you expect to be able to make by initiating a mediation process with them? Almost that reality check of, I get that that's important to you, but are you sure this is the best way to do that? If your goal is reducing bullying within the organization, maybe offering to work with the HR team around drafting or refining the code of conduct around bullying, or helping them to set up what would you say, like some type of a whistleblower thing, a complaints mechanism that's confidential, which means that you don't need to go and talk to your boss if you're experiencing them as bullying. Maybe that would actually make a lot more impact on the organization and your colleagues that you want to support than doing this in a one-on-one context with someone who's probably not likely to change. And then balancing all of that up with, look, it sounds like you're really tired at the moment. You've got elderly parents that you're looking after yourself. You're a carer. I'm just wondering how this sits then in the grand scheme of things in terms of priorities. It sounds like something that you definitely like to change, and that's a value that you have. There will also be other values like having energy to support other people around you or volunteer for causes that you're committed to, that kind of thing. Let's just maybe think about then, well, how much energy are you prepared to invest in this? Because the last thing that we want is we get halfway through and it's becoming a lot more draining and stressful than you anticipated. So going through those goals, as you can sort of see, really helps us to develop options in some situations, but also to refine the plan that we have. I was committed to doing mediation with this team leader because they were such a jerk. On reflection, maybe it's actually not likely to make any difference. I'm just causing pain for myself. And maybe I'd prefer my last 12 months with the organization to be stress free, connect to the people that I care about and give me energy, and maybe just kind of avoid some of those ones that are more draining. And that might mean that I can toe the line, at least in the short term, rather than this being the hill that I die on, for want of a better, way of saying that. So I hope that this video has been helpful for you. As I said, I'm planning on making a series of these around free conflict resolution training, very similar topics and approaches that I talk about when I do training with organizations. You can visit my website, simongoode.com, SIMONGOODE.com, if you're interested in the kind of workshops that I provide. Otherwise, thank you much for watching. If you would be prepared to press like or subscribe for a new channel like this, it's incredibly helpful. Otherwise, leave a comment about, well, what would you like me to cover in some of these future sessions? Is there a case study or a situation that you find challenging, or do you have a question around dealing with conflict? I'd be more than happy to just prepare a video looking at some of those specific issues if you'll give me an idea of the kind of things that are important to you. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. All the best.